All right. Well, hello everyone. This is Arthur Bedell, co-founder of Connecting Dots and Payments. This is a Connecting Dots and Payments podcast here with Rex. Gonna set the scene very quickly. Rex is joining so we can talk about AI, Gen AI, how it's revolutionizing payments, and just in general, right? To kind of talk about some of the newest trends. Rex, want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name is Roberto. I go by Rex. I was born and raised in Honduras, Central America, beautiful country. Afterwards, I went to the US, studied at Dartmouth, studied econometrics, government, and CS. Went into McKinsey, became a digital payments expert. Not as much as an expert as this guy, huh? But I learned a thing or two. And then at Stanford, we started DEUNA with the mission of helping brands sell online better and unlocking commerce. Yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Well, maybe we can dive into that a little bit, right? For some reason, I think we all know the reason, but AI has been something mentioned by a lot of payment companies. I think it's been talked about by, like, at least on a lot of the boards, both on some that I have witnessed, but also some that I know merchant sides, but also providers are talking about. The impact is pretty gigantic. Maybe we can talk about, DEUNA a little bit more. What is DEUNA? What does DEUNA do? And then, how is AI relevant to DEUNA today?
That's a great question, huh?
I know, right?
Loaded. Let me tell you like a little bit about where we started, and we started building a checkout, a seamless checkout to help these brands create a user network. We realized that very quickly that the checkout by itself wasn't enough, or it wasn't solving a high enough pain point.
Yeah.
And we went into building infrastructure, payment infrastructure, starting with orchestration. We then had built very advanced payment infrastructure, working with airlines, supermarkets, retailers, QSRs, the largest in Latin America, actually. And then we realized that we were sitting in all of this data, since we have the checkout and the orchestration layer.
Yeah.
That's where things started to really evolve with AI. I think that like a lot of companies right now are talking about point solutions with AI. How can I help with customer service, with an agent, or with outbound calls? But like those are point solutions, and what we're after is something bigger, more holistic, more business wide.
I think you're setting the scene pretty well because we've been seeing AI, at least on my perspective, right? We've seen AI and LLM models already apply to payments, smart routing, fraud detection, other things. But it has just been AI. And something that we're talking about and hearing a lot about lately is generative AI or Gen AI. And ultimately, right, that's a whole new wave. And when you start thinking about this, we have heard about bots or, as you said, right, some call centers and everything else. But what else is kind of there? What does Gen AI kind of bring to a table that, I guess I want to say regular because there's no regular AI, but that's, the LLMs that have been leveraged before hasn't brought to a table before?
That's a great question. Let me break it down in a little bit of parts.
Okay.
So yes, AI has been in payments for a while, and like there's like all these point solution use cases, but really it's more of machine learning than like AI in general. But like, how do you apply machine learning to make a decision on fraud or on a provider optimization, etc. Now, where we got lucky is that by building the checkout and the orchestration engine, we actually leverage and extract ourselves. We control the data extraction of every single data point that exists on a user's journey to purchase. So that is from the device fingerprint itself to the clickstream to the UTM, to the payment data, issuing bank, card type, and all of the checkout data with PII. So because of that, now that ML, those point solutions, with our partners, we can leverage to create a lot more impact. And it's not like we're reinventing the wheel. We just have better and more data than the market or than the typical merchant does. To address the question though is how does Gen AI get involved in all of this? Once you have so much data,
Yeah.
like how do you interact with it? And that I think is going to change very quickly, and we're actually making very good progress with that with Athia, and we're going to talk about that. But the Gen AI aspect of it is more how can the merchant really interact and understand what's happening, what matters, and why, and what to do about it. That's where it gets interesting.
So I think you discussed something that's cool in here, which is, how it can be applied, and I think we'll touch on that in a second. Mostly around the use cases that you're seeing. What problems is that solving? Because we're talking very general right now, but like I want to dive a little bit deeper. But before that, right, like you mentioned it as well, which is the data. The data itself, you're collecting it, I'm guessing, if you have an orchestration layer, from multiple different PSPs. By PSPs, I mean acquirers, I'm guessing also connected to different payment methods just directly, as well as potentially fraud providers and others in the space, right? So there's probably like a different sets of data that you're collecting, and by sets, I mean the format might be different. So you might have to actually normalize the data that you're collecting to be able to have a structure that enables you, to drive insights and potential recommendations, I'm guessing, from it. By the way, I like the name of Athia. So definitely interested on this. So bringing me to that point, right, before you're able to even like get recommendations, what is the process kind of looking like in order to normalize that data?
Okay, perfect. That's a great question. So to orchestrate, you have to connect two ways with each one of these providers:
Yeah.
gateways, acquirers, processors, fraud engines. We're connected to hundreds.
Okay.
We had to abstract that. That took over 4 years of a build. It was a 4-year build, abstracting all of that logic across different industries, across different countries, not only on the data formatting itself, but also on the behavioral aspect. Maybe this one takes longer to respond or has different statuses, etc. But because we have that abstraction already in place with the PSPs, but also have the checkout, we're able to not only abstract the PSP data or responses and what we're sending, but we were also able to standardize every other data point that exists. And like what is actually very interesting is we break up maturity and payments in 3 ways.
Okay.
The first bucket is merchants that are getting started in orchestration. They're deciding whether to build or buy, right? Those merchants, sometimes they have a payments team with resources, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
But like orchestration unlocks lower processing costs, redundancy, and higher conversion rates, right? Now, the second bucket is those that have already built it and they're looking for advanced payment infrastructure. And we've actually talked a lot about this, but like token optimization, and like or alternative payment methods depending on the country of the user.
Yeah.
Dynamic checkout, right? Then there's a third bucket, and that third bucket is how do I leverage the checkout and payments data to transform the business, the top line, the bottom line, everything. And that is where like that standardization of all of those data points, not only the PSPs, actually plays a role in it, and a very important one at that.
I kind of love this, and as you're talking, I was thinking to myself, and you mentioned a good point, which is, merchants have different maturity levels, right? Even PSPs actually, because when you build a company, right, you can spread yourself too thin, and then you have a problem. But if you're only in your one-trick pony, unless you're absolutely incredible at what you do, you're also going to face a problem at some point, right? Personal point of view, but when you look at payments and payment strategies, it is true. Like ultimately, what I have seen personally and keep seeing is you have some companies that leverage only one PSP, one payment processor. There are some others that will start, either building their own gateway, right, or potentially also just having different connections. So going to go multi-processor. Then there is, where do you store your own data, which is your payment processing data, your tokens, and everything else. I think that's a different topic. We can talk about this. And then after that, you have merchants that have, like a real team. And when they have a real team for payments, that's when things start to become very interesting. Why? Because you have experts, and people usually understand that payments can be leveraged for much more than just accepting a transaction. It can provide like kind of a customer experience that is very much home of the user, which is hyper important. Why retention? Why coming back to the checkout, etc. But then there is also like one more step, which is once merchants actually understood that you need payment leaders, because payments actually, why I got into the payment space, because it impacts everyone.
Everything. And
Everyone and
everything.
everything. Correct. And so when you think about the scale and the impact itself, there is so much that can be done. When you have a payments team, and unfortunately it's not all companies of every size, by the way, have a payments team. Some very large ones don't have, some very small ones actually do have a payments team. You start seeing that payments is everywhere, can be used for everything. And the data that you're collecting on payments, whether it's related to the order or what's actually in the basket or how you're paying, right, is something that you can leverage for so many different topics. For example, marketing, right? It impacts finance, it impacts security, it impacts so many other things. The point that I'm trying to get to here is actually quite simple. There are levels of maturity per merchants. AI can be used to help merchants in so many ways. Some companies are going to have almost no payments team, and they will use the AI to actually literally create their payment team and optimize on this front. So like, what are the few low-hanging fruits that I can go and like replace or modify or win in? Then the second tier, which is the companies that will start thinking about payments and have potentially a small payments team. Then AI is actually going to be able to enhance their capabilities and help them be a lot more efficient. And the third tier, which is, okay, now I have a payments team, I understand payments, I understand how to process payments too. AI can then come in and actually change the way that the business is overall operating. And while you were talking, I was thinking about this. I was like, shit, actually, AI can be used in so many different ways across every single type of companies and help every single one of them. Which brings me to the next point. You are already in the AI space for payments, right? With Athia. Would love for you to describe, what Athia is a little bit. But then I would love to better understand what are some of the problems that you're seeing at the different type of company levels, right? That you think an Athia, for example, or a Gen AI can help those type of merchants. I would want to say infancy, mature, and almost like experts.
Perfect. Oh, I love the question. And that's a great framework, huh? So to answer the former part of it, what's Athia? Well, she's the first enterprise AI system out there. She's Jarvis from Iron Man. Everyone is trying to build her. We actually built her. It took 18 months. A small team directly involved, personally leading that team.
Okay.
So she leverages over 17 agents, uh, machine learning models for our thermal segmentation, anomaly detection, forecasting, a correlation analysis, because LLMs at the end of the
Yeah.
day are based on inference.
Yeah.
An LLM doesn't know whether one thing matters more than the other. Like that's inference. To give it substance, you really have to do the math part and guide it with math. And that's what we've done. We've recreated cognitive architecture or leveraging cognitive architecture to take that data from extraction into dollars, insights,
Okay.
actionable strategies that allow the business to transform itself. Now, to answer it from like the infancy, intermediate, and experts,
Yeah.
let's start there. So on the infancy, Athia is very useful to allow you to set up rules and
Okay.
providers or routing strategies. Also suggesting what other providers or routing strategies you should think about based on your users and the behavior that it's seeing.
Okay.
On more of the intermediate, what we've seen is that like she can be leveraged a lot of like for a fraud, like specific bins that are creating issues, or specific providers, a specific products or categories. And we've actually seen the case where one processor one issuing bank, they never like there was 0% acceptance rate on that one. And that was very funny because like the overall acceptance rate was good, but
Okay.
there was one provider and one issuer that didn't go through. Not a single transaction. So having that flexibility
That's
of
crazy.
having something that is aware, I can tell you, hey, Arthur, this is happening. You should do something about it. And suggesting what to do, I would say that that's the intermediate.
Okay.
And then for experts, well, now we're getting into the really fun stuff. I'll divide it into two.
Okay.
The experts that are trying to leverage Athia to transform the payment side of it. And I think we always look at that as the first step, right? Because like payments is going to transform the rest of the business, and we totally are aligned on that. Um, the second step is those experts that are trying to take that value to the other parts of the org that usually don't get involved, like a marketing or an operations. But let's talk about step one first. Well, what we're seeing is like involuntary churn. This type of user using ML, you segment all of your users. This type of behavior, this type of user, when are they going to churn or why are they churning? What part of the checkout is like affecting in the conversion funnel? So we're seeing a lot of that, like with subscriptions, for example, or the dynamic checkout aspect of it. Hey, we detect Arthur because we device fingerprint you.
Yeah.
We know that Arthur likes ACH. That's a lower processing cost, no? Like, and that's where experts on step one are taking and using it. On step two, what we're seeing, especially with like our partners in Latin America, which we've built this with.
Yeah.
Now we're focused on the U.S. Chema and I are both in New York, as you're well aware.
Yeah.
But the like with Domino's, KFC, and LATAM, we're seeing marketing and operational use cases from how to communicate the proper message, product promotion to the proper user at the right time. She also sends the emails and SMSs.
She does it all.
Not WhatsApps yet, like so not all, but we're building her together, and that's cool. The other is like forecasting, so we are actually
Okay.
much more precise than their internal models at forecasting peak demand, inventory. So there's a lot of use cases where again that checkout and payment data is the richest in the
Yeah.
world. There's no provider that has access to every single data point
No.
from extraction. That is where we got lucky, and that's where that step one and step two of the experts, they're leveraging that capability on the checkout, on the payment, and on the AI side of transforming that data into dollars or insights that we are seeing right now.
So
Did
I
that
hear.
answer the question?
Yeah, it
It
does.
was a
So,
loaded question, so I hope I
well, like it's
broke it down.
when you look at companies, like companies have different sizes, as we mentioned. They also have different geographies in which they operate. They also have obviously different payment providers in their stack, right? Like every single company almost is unique, and that's what like for example, we talk about RFPs. RFPs is interesting because when you compare, for example, a payment processor that has worked for a company that has a similar business model than the one that you have, it won't be the exact same performance, even though it's super similar. Every performance is different, right? Like you don't have twice the exact same thing. And we try to be like, for example, I don't know, I'm a payment processor that works for Booking might not work for Expedia.
Agreed.
Right. And it's very, very hard actually to find out.
Or sometimes you want to use a network token, and sometimes you want to use a
pen.
Yeah, like
I agree. But so that's kind of my point. I hear you about this, and I kind of love this discussion because of it. Like when you look at infancy to me, where AI I think is going to revolutionize how things are being done, is it's gonna help companies that don't have the resources to have a team in place for payments to actually make right decisions, because Athia or the AI in question is going to be able to think, collecting the data already collected, but think for the actual company and just bring something as relevant as you said, hey, in the US, you don't need to have 3DS, enabled. Something dumb, huh? But like for some companies, it's actually a good thing to have 3DS in the US. But for most of them, it doesn't make sense. And I still see companies and friends of mine actually that I had to tell them, hey guys, like why do you have 3DS? And I guess Athia could literally tell them, you don't need to have that. Then you have the intermediate, which is they might have a small payments team and they're going to be thinking about, okay, how do I decrease my cost of acceptance, or how do I enhance my optimization? Hey, we're going to go into a different country. We don't have a processor for that country. Who should we look at? Right? And start kind of accelerating that process without having to, go around. And I'll talk about something else in just a second. But right now, for example, when you need information, like as a merchant, when you need information, what do? You go talk to other merchants. Or you start going to different processors. And what are the processors going to do? They're going to ultimately tell you
that they're the best.
Yeah, they're the best, but they're going to think about themselves more than they're going to think about you. And when you talk to different merchants, they'll tell you what happens to them, but there's always a bias. It will not be for your business, right? And that's what an AI can do. It can actually give you very, very personalized, and personalization is a big piece, but very, very personalized information on how to optimize, some things as rudimental as acceptance rates, or some things as complicated as, hey, I have a marketplace, and so I can run transactions on the different MCCs. And so ultimately, like, which MCC should I use to actually, get the highest performance? So that's number two. And then number three, when you look at experts, where I think AI is going to change everything, is you will now be able to, in a very complex environment, you have your multi-region, multi-processor, you use, again, not just on the processing, but you also have potentially different type of business models, right? So like subscription you talked about, but potentially you have very high AOV, average order value, and some of them you might have transactions that are going to be like $2. How do you deal with all of them? Some of them maybe you have a hold, right, for like a period of time because you purchase a service that you're going to use in the future. It's crazy the amount of use cases, but an AI could literally tell you how to optimize every single aspect of it, whether on the payment side of things, whether on the fraud side of things. And not only that, in my opinion, the vision that I would have for this would be, hey, I can get you the best things for you in sales. How do you optimize your sales? How do you optimize your marketing, right? What campaigns should you do? Once WhatsApp is available, it'll be cool. But that's where, like my head is going when I think about AI. What are some of the problems that you're seeing, right? That kind of low-hanging fruits?
Perfect. No, before we go into that, like I totally agree. It's gonna level the playing field for like even like infancy, maturity level merchants to really start punching above their weight with like as if they had a proper team of experts, and not only a proper team of experts, but also a proper team of experts that is aware of 100% of the data within it. So that is definitely cool, and that's very exciting. The second aspect, what we have seen on how enterprises leveraging AI is they're not going about it from the payments and checkout, because no one wants to build the dirty pipes and all of the infrastructure, that you need to actually do it. Everyone wants to do the sexy thing. Point solutions, agents. We have agents. We've been developing them for like 18 months. We have a multi-agent system. That
is cool.
That is not like the sexy part is useless without doing the actual work, that 4-year build. And what we've seen in the low-hanging fruit with like the problems that merchants, enterprises are facing here in the US especially, is that there's all these companies now trying to implement AI projects, right?
Yeah.
And they're 92% are failing, by the way. Only 8% succeed. We can talk about that too. But 92% fail because of a lack of standardized data. Think about Palantir. What does Palantir do? They send 10 forward engineers, they clean the data, connect it, pre-process it, feed it into ML, and then tell you that's going to be X amount of millions of dollars a year. Fair. We can standardize all of that by just changing the checkout or extracting the data ourselves. You have a system of agents interacting with machine learning models already based on standardized perfect data. That's where like everything gets, when you connect the dots between payments and the entire business. You see what I did there?
I did. No, this is cool. So you're saying that one of the main use cases that you're seeing this being relevant is around standardizing the data. You guys can already do that so that then it's digestible and actionable. What about fraud? What about personalization? How can it help the checkout? How can it help? Are you seeing anything there? What about fraud as well? And by fraud, I mean like how can you use AI ultimately, Gen AI, so like something that really looks at your own systems and identifies, hey, like this is what you should put in place, without needing, for example, consultants to come in.
And that's totally fair. We work with like several partners on the
Yeah,
fraud side of things. We complement with additional data and more rich data. Athia can definitely help suggest like different paths on how to optimize that, especially because we leverage our device fingerprint, right?
yeah,
So she's tracking, she's aware of who's who and what they're doing, and that definitely is very rich data and very actionable for the business.
yeah,
Um, in terms of low hanging fruit or like opportunities that we've seen in marketing, hyper personalization, everyone talks about it, but
yeah.
that's very hard to actually pull off. We've we've actually done very well with our marketing POCs right now with the merchants that are already in the private beta, uh, because once you can start communicating to a specific user the
Yeah.
day that you should before they churn next week,
That is nuts.
like with what they like, uh, you know, you also know whether they're buying when it rains or when it's sunny. Like we have all that data that can be leveraged to really personalize the offer and the communication with each merchant,
Yeah,
with each part consumer. But it doesn't only need to stop at like a campaign.
yeah,
Imagine like your transactional communications, like your purchase was just confirmed. Those can also be enriched with AI thanks to Anathia or another AI system out there. We don't know of another one yet, but um, you can personalize very well what is being communicated and change entirely how your consumers feel about the brand and increase even LTV from transactional communication.
I mean, if I was a merchant, because that's usually the position that I try to take, right? Which is, okay, what some things I might find interesting. I'm a nerd, right? I think we've assessed that, but
Just a
some
little bit.
things just a little bit. Some things I might find very interesting, but some things, like merchants, everything is about priorities, right? So like it might not be relevant to them today. Um, so it's hyper interesting that like I think when you look at bottom line and top line, I think that interests everyone. Everyone is
Totally.
thinking about
I
like
have a
making
question for
money.
you actually.
Tell me.
Have you seen like payments be leveraged to impact the entire bottom line and top line of the business more than just in payments right now?
This is a good question. Bottom line, yes. I mean, absolutely. Top line as well. I think, I can just look at the checkout, right? If you offer the right payment method, like something that consumers identify as, this is what I want to pay with, and making the experience seamless, that ultimately will impact top line, right? Because like you're enabling them to purchase. Like if I look at a company, for example, like Ticketmaster, you go there, and if you think about the experience, you're going to think about, I'm going on Ticketmaster to buy a ticket. Like, no matter what happens, I will get my ticket. Like, I will use 3 payment methods if I need to, but I'm actually going to purchase this, right? It's a need. It's behavioral. I look at like, if I'm on Uber Eats and they don't have my payment methods, or maybe like I have a credit on DoorDash or whichever it is, like I might switch, right? It's super simple. Ticketmaster, you wouldn't do that. So depending on this, whenever there's a lot of competition, I think that, yeah, payments can be leveraged at the checkout, especially offering the right payment methods in the right market as a differentiator. So that's number one. And then again, taking checkout once again on top line, um, you can have a dynamic checkout. You can show a certain payment method first, and then ultimately that will also influence the and make it easy for the customer to pay. For bottom line, I mean that actually helps too, because if, for example, you talked about pay by bank, it's something that a lot of companies are talking about right now. I think it's growing. I'm seeing a lot of it. I'm talking to a lot of companies that are actually innovative in that space. Um, and they're trying to find ways. I think I heard like a set of data earlier that like 81% of customers that are incentivized to use pay by bank are going to use it, and otherwise I think it falls down to like 40%, something like this. So things like this, right? Like if you put pay by bank in front of a customer and it's easy enough, like that will impact your bottom line as well. Like the top line will remain the same, but the bottom line, because of your own costs, is going to be helpful. So I see those things as, yeah, payments impacting both top and bottom line. And we can go into so many different ones, right?
Totally.
But yeah, those are definitely just easy examples of impacts that I've seen. But again, I think talking about priorities, right? Merchants have a lot of things that they need to take care of. Some companies focus fully on payments. Some companies have initiatives, and what they do is they take payments as a tool to fulfill those initiatives because it usually touches it. How would you say that, a company like DEUNA or Athia, I guess in general, or AI, I guess in general, can become a priority for those companies? Like what are some of the reasons why you would prioritize this over potentially just, other initiatives?
That's a great question. To give you a little bit of like visibility there.
Yeah.
Athia, we don't expect a merchant to adapt to Athia. Athia is probably the first enterprise product out there that is adapted to the merchant.
So it adapts to the merchant itself.
Yeah. And we also intervene, like, let's be honest, like we obviously make sure that, like, if, for example, a specific industry had some different data fields, we had to get involved, and it takes a couple of weeks, and that's fine. As long as you can actually deliver Jarvis, no one cares if you're a couple of weeks late. Not late, but like you actually
when you're building it
in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, you're building it.
But to give more visibility there, like if an Athia, for example, look at an Oracle or a Salesforce, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
All of those companies, they're not AI native players.
There's some now, though. Not Salesforce, obviously, but there's a massive wave of companies that are diving into that. The thing is, I'm not seeing them specifically focus on payments, though.
Agreed. That's the hard part, no?
It is the hard part.
But like, could you repeat your question in that sense? Like,
I think I keep hearing, I think coming back to what I was saying, ultimately merchants, they have priorities, right? Everyone has priorities. How do you make, applications of AI for payments a priority for either payments teams or executives, right? Within the merchant side.
Perfect. No. So Athia doesn't expect the merchant, or we don't expect the merchant to adapt to Athia, right? Athia is adapted to the merchant, and we have to definitely get involved. She adapts also by learning. But during the setup period, we definitely make sure that she's aware of the context of your business. The second point there is that we make it so that the MLs are trained and the system of agents is trained on moving a specific OKR.
Okay.
So we not only adapt it to the context of the business, but we also make sure that she's optimizing for something you care about. And that is where the difference comes into play, because an Oracle or a Salesforce, they're more standardized tooling, like they do one function. They don't, you can adapt them to you, yes, but that takes a lot of effort and consulting, etc.
It does.
Here, we can make sure that from day one, the product is, or the system, Athia, is moving the needle on the thing you care about the most. She can do a lot of other things in parallel, yes, but we make sure she's moving the needle in the direction that you care about. And that is why, like, a merchant that has a lot of different priorities would be very interested in implementing, not just for the sake of implementing AI.
Yeah. I mean, nobody really should, in my opinion, right? If you don't have an actual use case. So it's super interesting that Athia actually is tailored, like, is tailorable to each single merchant. So we're talking about personalization. Like, that's a thing, the path that needs to be taken. So in terms of priorities, just to summarize, I guess you're saying that because it impacts the OKRs that a company does, then it should be a priority because it will ultimately bring more efficiency and results to a company just by being there as part of the stack.
Totally. Like again, Athia turns data extraction
Yeah.
into insights thanks to all the checkout and payment data. Those insights are dollar strategies, right? Each strategy has a dollar amount. Now, if we tailor it to the OKR that you want the most or that you care about the most, and we work together, we train her together. We build the questions that like you typically ask. We modify the cognitive architecture of that system so that like the agents specifically or specific workflows start to mimic the behavior that you'd like. And then that's why you can actually move the needle on the OKR that a merchant would like.
So if you're already there, right, like you are already doing the data normalization, you're already providing kind of those insights, you are able to collect data, I'm guessing, from anywhere, and taking data that you've been collecting or data that, you know, the merchant has because you may not be implemented in every single place.
Totally. And what the POCs, by the way, like we don't have to like change the checkout to do a POC. So just want to be
decoupled. Okay, that's good to know as well. When you look at like if you're already there, what does it look like in 3 to 5 years?
Oh, this is the most stupid version of her ever.
Yeah, well, I guess, but like ultimately, like what?
She's kind of smart,
sort of. But what do you think is going to happen, right? How do you think that AI is going to be, you know, impacting payments? And let's stick to payments in the next 3 to 5 years, because I see so many potential issues. So I'm quite curious.
That's a great question because you can break it down from a consumer angle.
Yeah.
And how is that checkout going to evolve? There's a lot of conversations right now with like agents and MCP communication between those agents. A company in the payments world, not too small, big one, released an MCP protocol a couple of weeks ago, which is pretty cool. And I think that makes a lot of other questions. Like we actually discussed that, like how are the agents going to do 3DS? Are they going to do 3DS? No. But also, you can look at it from the perspective of the merchant.
Yeah.
And that's where I believe that AI is going to really, in the next 4 or 5 years, I would say even sooner, 2 to 3 years, be totally aware of the business. Awareness is something so unique in the sense that right now, if I had to ask any of the merchants that we work with or that you work with, do you know every single user, what they're doing right now, what they're buying?
Nobody can.
Even if you put the whole company in a single room, I don't think that they would be able to answer a lot of these questions.
They wouldn't.
But so total awareness, that is what Athia looks like in 2 to 3 years. And that's why, like when I mentioned that she's the most stupid version that she'll ever be right now, is because the cognitive architecture is allowing us to achieve awareness, but at the first level, I would say. And that's just going to continue to evolve.
Yeah, I think one of the best use cases that I've seen in the demo is how Athia can help, you know, select and put strategies in place to reduce the cost of payments by helping merchants identify and then the customers ultimately leverage the payment methods that are both best for the customer but also best from the merchant in terms of bottom line, which I think is pretty cool. Totally. Yeah, I think you touched on it, but talked about some of the issues. Agents can interact, right? And they can be on devices. And so when you think about it, 3DS, right? You get a OTP or other thing like this. The agent can get it. They can literally get the message itself, and then from there directly go and input it. And so, like, you could have agents literally completing transactions, and I think it's already happening. It's funny, but I don't know if you've ever tried. Go on ChatGPT or other places and try to ask it, hey, my girlfriend is ultimately, you know, it's her birthday tomorrow, whichever it is. I would like to buy her a present. This is her. Select the present that I should be buying and buy it for me.
Yeah.
Like I see that right now in the US, it's one flow. In Europe, it's a very different flow because of 3DS. How are agents going to be able to do that? How are we going to make sure that like the people that are, or I guess agents, but the people behind the screens are actually people.
It's also going to revolutionize like all fraud
It is.
controls.
It's going to be insane.
Like, where is your agent living? Is it in your phone? Is it in a in the cloud? Like, where's that IP coming from? Device fingerprint. Like,
imagine you have a wallet, you do Apple Pay, right?
yeah.
And then like from that wallet, like the biometrics aspect of it, I guess that is something that I don't know if I could go around. But anyways, let's look at it in different. There are others that are not using biometrics, OTPs, and AI itself could go and leverage any of the payment methods located in a phone to actually make a payment. They could buy anything. It can really swell out of control. So the guardrails and how things are going to be played on that front is going to be fascinating.
I agree with you entirely. And I think that there's a couple of companies that have infrastructure that agents will be able to interact. But I also see a very hard, like, or a very difficult path towards being able to have an agent just freely communicate with like any checkout. There's going to be a need of that infrastructure that sets standards, protocols to communicate and be able to purchase through. Like the agent itself from the consumer angle will need that other agent on the merchant angle to actually interact. I see it far-fetched, at least right now, that just on the consumer side of it, it'll automatically be able to like interact with any merchant.
Yeah.
I think that there needs to be a two-way communication between consumer agents and merchant agents. And that will be an interesting conversation probably for the next podcast.
Yeah, we'll have to do another one. No, actually, this is fascinating. AI in payments, there's a lot that we touched on. Fraud, personalization, how it can be impacted, and I guess applied to different type of businesses. I think it's pretty cool. For the people that haven't had the chance to actually check it out, I would highly recommend. At least you get a sense of like what is out there. This is, first of like many episodes, but we're gonna dive into so many different topics. Next time we can touch on, the impact of an orchestration. Is it just a smart gateway? Is it a lot more than that? And there are so many different topics, but the application of AI, it's at the forefront of many discussions right now, both at PSP and merchant level. So I'm excited to see how that, evolves and how we play in an AI world. So thanks, Rex, for the time. This was pretty cool.
No, thank you.
Many and more to come.
Of course. No, thank you very much, Arthur, and looking forward to our future conversations.
Cool. All right, man. Bye.